Welcome into Triple Zeros. I'm your host, Josh Buckalter. Follow me on Twitter at JoshGBuck. Hit up the Facebook page, Clocker Sports website, clockersports.com, and the email address is clockersports@gmail.com. We're on a little bit of a football kick right now. We typically cover NBA and NFL, but have to get some more football in because the football season is right around the corner, and I've been doing a lot of playoff NBA talk. So, that being said, I'm happy to bring on a fellow Last Word on Pro Football writer, an editor for the site as well, and probably the most knowledgeable guy I know on the New England Patriots and some Tom Brady action, which is what we're going to be discussing today. And with that being said, I'd like to bring on Dave Latham, like I said, editor and contributor to Last Word on Pro Football. Dave, thanks for joining the show, man. Appreciate it.
Hey, Josh. Thanks for having me.
So, the first thing I want to get into, and you can follow Dave on Twitter at Dave Latham Pat's Thoughts, DL Pat's Thoughts on Twitter. First thing I want to get into is, what are your expectations for your Patriots now that, you know, it's a new era? 20 years with Tom Brady under center, and now it's going to be somebody else. We don't know who it is, and we'll get to that in a moment. But what are your expectations for the team this year?
Yeah, so it's definitely going to be weird losing Tom Brady, seeing someone else under center. So really, no matter who ends up winning that battle, it's going to be a downgrade. I'm not going to say 2019 Tom Brady was the same dude he was in 2016 or 2017 when he won MVP, but he was still a really good quarterback. But I do think this team will remain somewhat competitive. Like, they're not going to bottom out like the Colts did when they lost Manning that one year. But
That was rough.
I definitely think the expectations need to be tempered a little bit. No more Super Bowl or bust for a while, I don't think.
Do you see them being a playoff contender, or do you think is Super Bowl possible for them, or do you think they're probably a playoff team at best?
I'm thinking playoff team at best because, you know, last year they went 12-4, but they faced a laughably easy schedule. And I know the joke is always the AFC is a crapshoot. Anyone could win it. But, like, last year especially, I think they set a record for, like, easiest schedule ever faced through the first 8 games. Mm-hmm. So just that's going to get harder. So even if Brady was still here and everything was the same, you're going to lose a few more games because of that. And, you know, the defense was so amazing last year. You can't really do that year for year, historically speaking. It just doesn't happen. So there's another few. I think if everything breaks right, they might be able to win the East if the Bills take a step back, but it's going to be tough. And that's probably their ceiling.
You nailed it. That easy schedule in the beginning kind of set the tone for the disappointment in the second. I don't want to say even disappointment. Like you said, they went 12-4, but it definitely was a tough road to hoe for them the last 8 games or so. Are you surprised they didn't do more to upgrade the weaponry around, again, whoever ends up playing quarterback?
Oh, yeah, 100%. So I was a naive optimist back in March. I thought, you know, Brady's going to sign back. Life will be good. Round it up, you know, one or two more times. But he left. So when he left, I got that they weren't going to pursue the really big name guys because you're going into a little mini rebuild here. But I'm surprised that they did nothing outside of draft 2 tight ends in the 3rd, which tight ends historically need a year or two before they're ready to really contribute on a regular basis, and this offseason especially. So I am surprised that they're basically just saying, okay, this quarterback's going to be worse. These weapons weren't good enough for Tom Brady to work with. Have fun, whoever it is. So,
and I want to ask you about that. So you got 2 tight ends in this draft, Devin Asiasi and Dalton Keene. Are we seeing any type of Gronk, Aaron Hernandez thing going on with these 2 guys, or are they just kind of going to be basically dogged by those comparisons for the rest of their career?
I mean, it's unfair to put anything like that on those 2 guys. Skill set wise, they're a little bit similar. Asiasi's more of the typical tight end, inline blocker, great pass catcher. I had him as the second best tight end in the class, which was something of a hot take at the time, but he was the second guy off the board, so go me. Keene's more of a jack of all trades, master of none, I think. Belichick loves to use fullbacks, and James Devlin's retired. I could see Keene doing a lot of that, a lot of scheme stuff. Because if you look at his college tape, if you can get him into open space, he's lethal. It's just getting him there that's the problem. So I could see them. Asiasi is probably going to be the more important guy this year, but I think Keene's going to have more of the highlight plays. But I think a poor man's Gronk Hernandez is a fair comparison, but you're not going to get anything like what they were because, honestly, Rob Gronkowski's once in a lifetime.
No, I totally agree with that. What are your thoughts on Julian Edelman sticking around? When they started, when Brady left and you kind of could see that they weren't going to be doing too much adding, I thought he might be a guy that they tried to move out. Are you surprised he's still on the team?
Pleasantly so, yeah. I mean, Edelman is, he's one of those guys, if he's on your team, you'll love him. If he's not, you absolutely despise the dude. and he is on my team, so I'm a fan of the dude. But I did think there was going to be a while where they're just kind of not bottom out, because Bill Belichick would sooner root for Army than tank. But I did think that they were going to sort of look at the young direction, and Tampa, was basically looking to just surround Brady with anything that made him happy. So a part of me was expecting like maybe Edelman for a third, and then you just build around the new kids, but that didn't happen. And I think it's a good thing in the short term for the Patriots, because there really is nothing behind Edelman in terms of proven commodities. If he can stay healthy, he's going to be arguably the most important non-quarterback on the team.
And that's my next question. The young guys, are we expecting big steps up for N'Keal Harry and Jacoby Myers this season? Because I know preseason last year was a lot of hype around them, but that kind of tempered as people realize, you can't put that kind of expectations on rookie receivers, almost like rookie tight ends. They need a little bit of time to get themselves acclimated to the speed of the game. Do you think that we see a leap from those guys, Harry and Myers?
My hope's higher for Myers than Harry. When the Patriots signed Cam, everyone's instant reaction was, this is great for Harry because he's a jump ball specialist, like really big, great in the open field. It's just he can't separate to save his life. And Cam had a bunch of those guys in Carolina. Mm-hmm. But if you look at his underlying stuff, this is Cam I'm referring to, all of his most efficient seasons came when those guys weren't the primary focus of the offense. Like his 2015 MVP season came in the year that Kelvin Benjamin missed the whole season. From an efficiency standpoint, he was best from 2011 to 2013. Those were the Steve Smith years. Mm-hmm. In 2018, he had a bit of a resurgence. That was when the offense started focusing more around McCaffrey. They got DJ Moore, started incorporating that. So I'm not that sold on Harry having a good year, making a big leap, and he's already not practicing. We're not sure if it's an injury or personal issue, but he hasn't been practicing the last few days, so that's not going to help anything. Myers, I liked him. Well, coming out of school, I liked Harry more than Myers, but Myers was probably better as a rookie. I'd be interested to see what he does this year, but if you're really looking for a completely out of the dark name, Gunnar Ulchefsky, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. He was a Division II cornerback in college that Belichick brought in last year. He returned punts for a little bit, then got hurt. But according to a bunch of reports, he's making a really good impression at wide receiver. They're saying he's the second best guy there aside from Julian Edelman. Now, that might say more about everyone else than him, but it would be a really classic Bill Belichick thing to like somehow find this random Division II cornerback, say, hey, you're a wide receiver now, and get something out of it.
No, yeah, and I think that if we're talking about the Patriots, it's probably what we should expect, other than Harry and Myers to make any real significant leaps. You brought up Cam and his efficiency with Steve Smith, so that's a natural transition towards the quarterback position, obviously. With the news coming out, well, I don't want to say the news, but there have been reports of Jarrett Stidham struggling somewhat in practice. I haven't heard much about Brian Hoyer. Cam Newton is Cam Newton. Well, he's a version of Cam Newton. What are your expectations for the quarterback position this season? Who do you think is going to be under center?
So I think it's Cam's job to lose. You mentioned Stidham's been struggling, and that's kind of what you expect out of a fourth-round pick who he had a good preseason, but that's such a small sample, you really don't know what to account from that. But recently, this is 1 or 2 days old, Stidham suffered a leg injury, and he was actually in the emergency room, I want to say Thursday, getting it checked out. Now, there was a report, I want to say it was with CLNS Media, but don't quote me on that. I think he was the first on it, who said that it's going to be a few weeks before he's back up at full strength. He's going to try to practice through it. Doing anything at 11 on 11s on Friday's practice, and he was just like throwing on the sideline during 7-on-7s. So I think any chance he had of winning the job is gone. It's Cam versus Hoyer, and if Cam can't win that one, he's gone. But in all honesty, though, reports have said Hoyer's been doing pretty well. I mean, you adjust the bar because it's Brian Hoyer you're talking about, right. But they're saying that he's probably the best one early on in camp, which makes sense. He's been around since like the Nixon administration, so he's pretty familiar with the system. Cam's reportedly improving over the last few days, and I think that'll keep going as he gets more comfortable with what they're doing in New England, getting used to the receivers. So if Cam's not under center in week 1, I'd be astonished.
Brian Hoyer is probably my favorite journeyman quarterback. He's just such a streaky guy. He can look amazing for about 4 or 5, maybe even 6 games, but then the wheels just fall off, and you're reminded why he's been bouncing around the league. So
one of my favorite Brian Hoyer stats out there is back when he was on the Browns from 2013 to 2014, I think. He went 11-5 in his 16 starts. When Brian Hoyer didn't start, the Browns went 1-15 under that time. It's just like, was Brian Hoyer the missing piece?
Greatest quarterback in Browns history, Brian Hoyer. So you talked about, let's talk about some Cam and his place in this team. Let's assume he becomes the starter. You've seen a lot of pictures of him and Julian Edelman working out together, even before organized team activities began. Is that a good sign? I think that, you talked about how he was more efficient with Steve Smith. Now, Edelman's not Steve Smith in terms of stretching the field or anything like that, but his ability to get open and to find the soft spot in the defense, how well do you see that playing out for Cam in New England this year?
So Edelman he's a good receiver, because this is going to come off sounding like a little bit of Edelman slander. He's a very good receiver. The Patriots do not win 3 Super Bowls this decade without him. But to a certain extent, he was a product of Tom Brady. Like, they had an inseparable mind meld that, like, only is rivaled by him and Welker back in the day. And there was a lot of just, like, when in trouble, look for Edelman. He's somewhere. He's probably open by a little bit, but he does most of his work underneath. It's going to take time for Cam and Edelman to get that development. So I do expect a few growing pains. Honestly, I could see it going a lot like it did in 2013 for the Patriots. That's the year that Welker left. Hernandez got his, legal issues, let's just call it that. Brandon Lloyd left. Gronkowski was hurt to start the year. And the Patriots were rolling out Kembrell Tompkins and Aaron Dobson and Julian Edelman. So it took a while for Edelman to be really efficient, but it was basically Brady to Edelman, Brady to Edelman, Brady to Edelman every single pass for a while. I could see that happening where early in the season it's not that efficient, but they figure it out as they go along. So that's why I'm probably expecting an ugly offense to start the year, but it'll steadily improve as Cam gets more used to things.
Real quick before we switch sides of the ball, is there any worry long term about Sony Michel's health?
Yes. I'd be surprised if he isn't starting on the PUP. I didn't like the pick when it happened. He had a pretty good 2018 behind that great offensive line, but he had a knee injury in high school. Coming out, I remember the first thing I read about Stoney after they drafted him was he had an arthroscopic knee surgery or something where it was chronically his knee is messed up. Last year he had an off-season surgery. This year he had an off-season surgery. So I don't think Sony's going to be around too long. He's going to be on the team this year in some capacity, but I think it's going to be Damian Harris and Rex Burkhead taking the early work, and James White, doing his normal thing on third downs until Stoney. Can you hear me? Because an airplane just flew over.
No, I got you. Yeah, you're clear.
Okay. Because normally there isn't airplanes around here, but anyway. So yeah, I think Damian Harris is going to be the primary guy while Sony's hurt, and with this offensive line, I think Harris is going to take the job and roll with it.
Yeah, he has a knack for the end zone. Healthy. He does have a nice nose for the end zone, and Burkhead himself can't stay healthy. So something about those UGA running backs, man. Todd Gurley. I don't know about Chubb's injury history, but I know that those knees and UGA running backs just don't seem to be compatible. Switching sides of the ball, the Patriots had a little bit of an exodus in the linebacking core this offseason. Are you expecting there to be a significant dip in production from that side?
Absolutely. So earlier we mentioned the Patriots. Obviously, they had an amazing defense last year. Most of that was driven by the coverage unit. The secondary was just freaking amazing, but the front seven still had to do their stuff. So in addition to it's naturally going to get worse because you're playing real teams this year. You lost Hightower, you lost Van Noy, you lost Collins, and even looking more on the defensive line, you lost Danny Shelton, nose tackle. And you didn't really replace him. Landon Roberts is gone too. So right now it's looking like Jawan Bentley's going to be the primary starter, the main guy, which is asking a lot out of him. He's played well in limited time, but you've never seen him with a full role. The thing I'd be looking out for is Adrian Phillips, who safety for the Chargers, the Patriots signed this offseason. I could see them using him in sort of a pseudo linebacker role, like they used to do with Patrick Chung. Probably won't be the best against the run, but it's a passing league. You play to stop that. So I could see him getting a lot of snaps there.
That makes a lot of sense. What are your thoughts about Stephon Gilmore? Is he the best corner in the game still to this day? Because I mean, that dude just locks stuff down, except for Devontae Parker. Like he pretty much dominates.
Except for Devontae Parker.
Where do you rank? Do you think he's do you think he's the top guy still in the league?
Oh yeah, I definitely do. I mean, obviously the Parker game was rough, but you got to let him every now and again. You can't get him. You can't get him every single time.
Yeah. No, there's always somebody that has your number.
Yeah. And the craziest thing too, that's the first time Parker's done anything against Gilmore. When they met in week 2, Parker didn't have a single catch. 2018, Parker did like nothing on Gilmore. It was just one of those freak games at the wrong time. But I do believe Gilmore's the best cornerback in the league. When you look at what the Patriots ask him to do, essentially Bill Belichick's defense, when it's really going, it goes because they have multiple cornerbacks that can play man coverage at a high level. So Gilmore's obviously amazing at that, and he's usually just left on an island on his own. Back in the Malcolm Butler, Logan Ryan days, they'd kind of switch it up. Like they'd play a lot of man, but Butler would usually get the shiftier guy, Ryan would get the bigger guy, and they'd have safeties on whichever one had the tougher receiver. With Gilmore, it's just him on an island every single time, with like a few exceptions. Like usually when they play the Chiefs, they have Jonathan Jones, their slot cornerback, take Tyreek Hill because Hill's just blazing fast and Jones is the only one that can keep up with him. But by and large, it's usually Gilmore on his own against the best receiver they have, and you just shift the rest of the coverage to everybody else because whoever Gilmore's covering isn't going to do anything that day.
How much longer do we see Bill Belichick coaching the Patriots?
I mean, I don't see why he'd want to leave now. He's old, but this is what he loves to do. And I think he does. This is a little narrative street, but I do think that he would like to prove that, like, he's not just a product of Tom Brady. Like, they respect each other. I'm not buying into the whole Bill hates Brady, Brady hates Bill thing. But I do think that Belichick wants to prove, like, look, I can win without the greatest quarterback ever. And to an extent, I think Brady wants to go down to Tampa and say, look, I can win without the greatest coach ever. So
let's switch gears now and talk about Tampa Bay, as it's been dubbed this offseason. What are your expectations for Brady in his first new system in the NFL? I think he said it's his first time with the offensive coach in 20 or what did he say, like 30 years of playing football or something like that?
Yeah, I'm definitely in his time in the NFL. I don't really know too much about his Michigan coaches, but I think he's going to be really good. So, like I said earlier, if you're looking for 2007 or like 2016 Tom Brady, that guy, I don't think he's quite there anymore, but I still think he's a top 10 quarterback in this league. Last year, if you really look at what he was working with, you could make a case it was the worst supporting cast in football. They had the lowest combined PFF grade. I think they were dead last in average separation per target. Just a whole bunch of things you don't want to be in last in. They were in last in, and now he gets to go to Tampa Bay where he gets Chris Godwin's, Mike Evans, and whatever is left of Rob Gronkowski, which, even if it's the 2018 version, is better than what he had last year. So,
where do you rank this group of weapons in his all-time standings? Because I know he's had some stellar teammates, but these guys are, I think, as a unit, they might be up there with the top group.
Oh, yeah. I don't think 2007 Patriots, I don't think there's ever been a group assembled as dangerous as that when you look at, like, prime Tom Brady, prime Randy Moss, prime Wes Welker, and all of them pissed off over the Spygate thing. Like, they were out to just destroy everyone that year. I've never seen, like, so much of a show no mercy, like, keep driving up the score offense in my life. They're not that, but I think this has a solid case as the second best supporting cast Brady's ever had.
I would say, so I would agree with you on that, because whenever you have Moss, that probably gives you another step up just because off of that alone.
Yeah, like, I love Mike Evans. He's not Randy Moss.
No. So would it be fair to say then that this might not be their top group, but this is probably their deepest group, because you got three tight ends really when you consider Brady as well. The backfield is 3 deep, so I mean that's kind of familiar with Patriots days, but you're going 2 to 3 guys deep on the receivers, and then 2 to 3 guys deep at the tight end position. Is it deeper than those groups, maybe?
You can make an argument because 2007, the tight ends were Kyle Brady and Ben Watson, and they're fine.
Ben Watson had a decent
special
production that year. He was okay, serviceable.
He's a solid starter, but like nothing special. OJ Howard has the athleticism to be more than that. Rob Gronkowski, we've obviously seen what he was. I don't think that's there anymore, but if he is, God help the league.
Right. I agree with that.
So let's see. My biggest concern with Tampa is, like, from an offensive standpoint anyway, what happens if Mike Evans or Chris Godwin goes down? Because all of a sudden you're starting Scotty Miller, which you probably don't want to be doing.
No, yeah, I agree with that. So my concern is, and I pose this question to you: after coming from such a precision offense and really working the short to intermediate game, he's going now to a vertical offense where they're trying to challenge you down the field and they're trying to mediate to long range stuff. Do you see Brady struggling with that at all? Is there some pepper off of that deep ball?
I don't think there's going to be too much of an adjustment there because when you look at Brady, obviously you think of, like, he's normally had like a Wes Welker, Julian Edelman, guys who thrive at getting open quickly, but don't ask him to go more than 15 yards downfield because they just can't do it. But if you look at the times when he has had a deep threat, he's been amazing. So '07, you had Moss. Everyone knows about that season, but that was a long time ago. You probably shouldn't count on too much of that happening. But in 2017, he got Brandon Cooks first year from New Orleans, and Julian Edelman tore his ACL in the preseason. Overnight, the team turned into a deep passing team, and Brady won MVP that year. He led the league in air yards. I think he had the highest PFF grade, like highest EPA per play. He was fantastic that season, and he did it by chucking the ball deep, constantly to Brandon Cooks and Rob Gronkowski. So I think he definitely still has the ability to do that. The arm strength, honestly, I haven't noticed that much of a depreciation between like 2017 and now. It's not quite what it was, but it's not like 2015 Peyton Manning where he could barely throw it 5 yards.
Who do you see becoming Brady's favorite target? Let's leave Gronk out of it because I think sentimentality would lead Brady to lean on Gronk in times of doubt. But of the guys that he's just playing with for the first time this season, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, O.J. Howard, which of those three do you think gets the most love in the offense?
See, my bet in the offseason would have been Chris Godwin just because Evans and Godwin are both amazing, so we take that out of it. But Godwin plays the slot. He does more of the stuff that Brady historically has been comfortable with. But I've been reading a bunch of camp notes from Tampa Bay, and God, it looks like him and Mike Evans are like about to destroy the league together. Evans said something to the point of like, Tom Brady wants to make me a living legend, and I'm like, oh God. And if you watch the highlight, if you watch the highlights from like training camp, and granted, this is only the stuff on Buck's Twitter, who knows what's really going on. Mm-hmm. It's like always like highlight catches to Mike Evans. So, I mean, it really could be either guy. And Brady's never had a problem with anyone as long as they A, have talent, and B, know where Brady wants the ball to go. Mm. So like, don't just stay on script, don't do anything he doesn't expect, and he will throw you the ball. So I think both guys are gonna be a huge part of the offense. I don't see like anyone struggling to adjust to Tom Brady being there, but I'd have to give the slight edge to Evans.
Do you think the Bucks, and I probably already know this answer, but how much? I mean, I'll rephrase it then. How much of an impact do you think Brady will be in terms of just not turning the ball over at the rate we saw Jameis Winston do? Because I think without that, the Bucks are a playoff team, but they're in a very tough division. So, do you think that has that kind of an impact on them? Just Brady maintaining control of the ball?
So that's definitely going to be a huge positive, not having a guy that throws 30 interceptions in a year. And the funniest thing is, if you look at Winston, he's like, it's easy to make the jokes like, 30 interceptions, the dude's terrible, but he's the best and the worst quarterback in the league at the same time. He makes some genuinely phenomenal plays that other guys just simply cannot make. He's aggressive down the field and he moves the chains really well. He just can't stop throwing it to the other team. So I don't think, like, Brady is better than Jameis Winston by a lot. That's probably an extra like 2 wins right there, but I don't think Winston was the active liability he was portrayed as, but I do believe this is going to be a playoff team because, one, Brady is better, ball control is going to be better, and I think the defense is ready to make a pretty big step. If you look at their secondary, they have Sean Murphy-Bunting, Jamel Dean, somebody else, I'm blanking on the name, but those three are both first or second year guys last year, and they all graded out really well on PFF. They got more playing time as the season increased. And I think that secondary is really going to make another leap this year. Granted, playing in the NFC South is not fun at all, having to go up against Drew Brees and Matt Ryan a collective 4 times. Mm-hmm. But I think at the very least they get the 5 seed as the best wild card. I do believe that they could beat out the Saints for the division, but I'd probably bet on the Saints winning it right now.
Yeah, I feel like the Saints, the Falcons to me are a team that just alternates being like okay and then bad. The Saints are a team to me that alternates being really good and then good. Like, so they're beatable. They're just, but they're still going to be competitive.
Mm-hmm.
The Winston thing is funny to me because I can't imagine how you could go through this long in your career and not have corrective vision. Like, you don't have contacts or anything. Like, holy crap, dude, we saw you squinting in college and you were a pro and made it through your whole contract and now you go and get surgery. Like, what? That just always
He's going to get a chance to. He will get a chance to start again, and if the corrective vision thing actually works, the guy's going to be a Hall of Famer, because if he was that bad throwing blind...
Yeah, dude. And with the Saints, too, so Sean Payton's going to have I know he's got some plans for that. You mentioned the defense, and I like that the front seven on Tampa Bay with Shaq Barrett and Jason Pierre-Paul, and then that back end, like you said, they're young guys, but they're growing into their roles. How far off do you see this year's Tampa Bay defense being from... Let's say we'll even compare them to this year's Patriots. Do you think that there'll be some kind of comparison there, or do you think the Patriots still have the edge?
This year's Patriots, it's going to be close, honestly, because like we mentioned, the Patriots defense lost just about everyone that doesn't play cornerback, and there's going to be some natural regression playing teams that actually know how to throw the football. But I think New England's is still going to be a little bit better, but it's going to be a lot closer than what most people think it will be.
Which team do you think finishes better at the end of the year?
Oh, Tampa.
That was quick. That was a quick one.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't have the Patriots tanking out, but I do think, like, with the defense coming back to earth and the offense, like, going to take some time to find itself, because Cam Newton's a great quarterback, but he can't do it all on his own. Very few guys can. So I have the Patriots going, like, 8-8, 7-9. I have the Bucs going 11-5.
Wow, I'm surprised. I mean, I get the regression, but that division still seems like it's theirs at least for another year. I know Buffalo was on the come up, but I don't know if they have the ability to finish like that. I think they are, I don't want to say a front-running team, but I definitely think that they benefit as well from being, kind of that young unknown. But I can't argue. Listen, that's why you're here. You're here to talk about it. So who do you think is it the Bills that are the biggest threat, or do you think maybe the Jets have a chance to do it? I know that they've got a lot of turmoil going on.
It's definitely going to be the Bills if it's anybody. Like, if you look at the roster, except for the quarterback position, I'd put that up against any other in the league. You got Diggs, John Brown, and Beasley. Like, that's a fantastic wide receiver trio. The offensive line, nothing special, but they get the job done. Yeah, secondary, you got Trey White. What more do you need? And a great safety duo, and front seven is pretty good. I think they didn't lead the league in sacks last year, but I think they were top 5. Same in like pressure rate stuff. So they have a really good all-around defense. It's just I am not sold on Josh Allen in the slightest. I don't think he's particularly good at football. If he can make a big step up, then it's their division to win. I think they're Super Bowl contenders. But as it is now, I think it's going to be sort of like if they tank out, it'll be because Josh Allen pulled a 2018 Blake Bortles or a 2019 Mitchell Trubisky.
Ouch. Wow, that's a shot fired right there. I felt that one. Mitchell Trubisky. Oh, man. Talk about a prediction coming true, by the way. I know that's not, what we're here for, but the 2018 Bears comparison to the, 16 Jags, that was like one of the most spot-on predictions that everybody had. And I mean, you could see it a mile away. So, last question that I have for you. Does Tom Brady get another ring?
It's going to be harder being in the division he's in, but I think so. I think he's got like 2-3 years left, and the way that Tampa's built, it's a young secondary. The weapons are there for a while, and they've added just enough to keep Brady comfortable with like what he's already aware with, and I'm going to say yes, he does.
All right, there you go, folks. You got it. Dave Latham, thank you very much for joining me. You can follow him on Twitter at DLPatsThoughts. Again, thanks so much for being on the show, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Josh.
So that's going to do it for this episode of Triple Zeros. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at JoshGBuck. Hit up the Facebook page, Clocker Sports, website, clockersports.com. Email address, clockersports@gmail.com. Always, as usual, read the stuff. Last word on pro football, PippinAintEasy.com. And until the very next time, I'm gone. I'll see you later.